I just watched all 3 Made in Abyss movies, and wow, I now have an image seared into my mind that I won't be forgetting for quite some time. The stories covered in the first 2 films are also covered in more detail in the first season of the Made in Abyss anime, but film 3 is the bridge between seasons 1 and 2, which is going to be the bulk of what this video is about. Made in Abyss is quickly rising to the top of my favorite anime series. It's fantastical and wondrous, while being grotesque and unsettling. The juxtaposition of the cute little kid designs within this horrifying survive-at-any-cost world of monsters is just the surface of how well the show manages to marry 2 diametrically opposed tones seamlessly. Movie 3, Dawn of the Deep Soul, cranks everything up to an 11 in some of the most gruesome and depressing moments the protagonists have faced yet, while really stepping up the animation and direction, which blew me away. I'm not crazy about the multimedia strategy a lot of anime have pivoted to, but if the result is we get high-budget experiences like this, I can't really complain. Without further ado, let's briefly talk about the first 2 films of this franchise before moving on to movie 3. Unsurprisingly, I don't have too much new to say about movies 1 and 2, since I've already discussed season 1 in my viewer recommendations video from February, which I'll leave a link to in the description. I haven't watched Made in Abyss since then, so I actually was appreciative that I could jump into these movies for a quick recap before I got into the third one. But I do think that the story covered by movie 1 suffers the most due to being squeezed into a 2-hour runtime. Journey's Dawn has a lot of heavy lifting to do, covering 17 chapters of the manga, whereas movie 2 covers 8 chapters, and movie 3 covers 13. I think that's by far the movie's biggest weakness. Not only does it have to condense so much story into so little time, but there was a brand new scene added featuring Liza at the very beginning, which I thought was cool, but unnecessary, and further condenses the time allotted for the rest of the story. I did think that it was a good retelling. I think if you wanted to show a friend Made in Abyss, this wouldn't be a terrible entry point, but as someone who's seen this story already, I couldn't help but feel things were rushed. Scenes move really quickly from beat to beat to try and get in as much as possible. It was effective, but not as enjoyable a watching experience as the anime. But that's really my only complaint with Journey's Dawn. It's kind of a big one, but I suppose they did the best they could. Movie 2, Wandering Twilight, actually didn't have this problem at all. I thought movie 2 was as close to perfect as could be. It was a faithful adaptation that captured the essence of the story. Midi and Nanichi made me cry again, and that's all I have to say about that. Now, let's get to some creepy madness in the 5th layer. This series has always been beautiful to look at, and right from the jump, we are taken to the long built-up field of eternal fortunes in this gorgeous sequence, which is quickly undercut. Reg, Riko, and Nanichi encounter one of Bondrewd's Umbra hands. I absolutely love the design for these guys. None are as sleek as Bondrewd's design, but their mechanized suits give off this inhuman impression right away, and when considering the effects that the Curse of the Abyss has on the body around this point, it's up to your imagination how horrifyingly mutilated these figures are. I thought it was thematically interesting that the film starts off with this beautiful location, Riko's mom's favorite spot, only for it to be filled with a dangerous, invasive species and burned down. It not only sets the tone for the story that's about to unfold, but hammers home the danger that can come from organisms settling where they don't belong. How the film progresses from here somehow manages to be constantly subversive, while at the same time being completely predictable, which is best represented by Bondrewd. The arrival at his headquarters was so interesting. First, the squad encounters Prushka, who is a bit annoying and nosy, but she's no threat to the children. Then, there is this gloriously menacing scene of Bondrewd rolling up with his squad. The music that plays and the way the camera frames Bondrewd lets us know he's a bad dude. Plus, everything we've heard about him through Nanichi has really solidified that, but he doesn't act bad at all. Bondrewd's entire personality is so unique. I think he was an amazing villain. The series hasn't really done an outright villain before. The closest thing they've come to is Ozen, who turned out to just be testing them. Of course, there have been monsters, but I'm talking about a real human antagonist. And while Bondrewd is certainly not a good guy, I like how the story doesn't just make him this maniacal creep. He's got a strange, polite charm despite being up to no good in the neighborhood. He's got a dark sincerity to him. He genuinely believes what he's doing is justified, and there's not ever doubt or remorse in him for his actions. His strange fatherly relationship with Nanichi was constantly gripping. The way he can manipulate the little furball was so enticing and despicable. Bottom line, I think Bondrewd was a fantastic addition to this story, and that's not even mentioning the physical threat he is to the gang. So after we get a horrific scene of Reg tortured, where the Umberhands steal his arm and piss, we get a sequence that was downright fantastic. Everything with leading Bondrewd to the cave, executing the trap, and then Reg annihilating him was great. It was so well done, I legit thought this was over, and I wondered what the second half of the movie would be. Then of course, he reveals the true nature of the Umberhands and destroys everyone. Bondrewd then gives us the mandatory villain monologue and insight into his theory on curses versus blessings, which was fascinating because he's proven correct by the end. Hearing that the secret is love from Bondrewd of all people falls right in with the weird marriage of tones that I mentioned earlier. On paper, that's kind of a delightful thing to hear, but this man is forging genuine love for the sake of exploiting the rules of the Abyss. Of course, the direct implication of this reveal is that Bondrewd plans to use Prushka for his own blessing, and he succeeds. I thought that everything from the raid to get Reg's arm back to the end of the movie was the darkest this story has ever gotten. The action also goes balls to the wall insane. Dark Reg? That scene is banana nut muffins. I don't even know what to say, but just wow. When he snaps out of it, the way he describes the sensation, paired with other evidence throughout the series, makes me think he's either got multiple personalities, or there are multiple Reg-type robots that exist as part of some larger network that he's occasionally been tapping into. Anyway, the fight down in the pit of Bondrewd's failed experiments is so disturbing, and yet the action is bombastic and well coordinated as they fight back up and Bondrewd slowly transforms into his blessed state. Ugh. So good. Then things get truly tragic. I actually have a hard time thinking of anything in fiction that is as deeply fucked up as this, outside of events involving real-world historic tragedies. Half of the raid was to rescue Prushka from Bondrewd. That's where Rico went off to originally. But in a twist that kinda gives me Ozymandias vibes, Bondrewd's plan has already been enacted long before the protagonist had any time to stop it. He mutilated Prushka into one of his cartridges, using just what he needed to sustain her life in order to bless himself through the love he manipulated her to feel for him. Her thoughts as she is suffering in pain within the cartridge are so disturbing, and of course, we get a flashback of her time with Bondrewd to really twist the knife. Rico blasts Bondrewd's ass with Reg's severed arm, and the day is saved? Well, as saved as it can be in the Abyss. Nanichi and Bondrewd share some parting words, but the image that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the image that's seared into my mind, comes here. Rico is in a state of desperate shock, fondling Prushka's cartridge over in her hands, struggling to make Prushka's existence at all comfortable as her blood and guts spill out onto her lap. What a terrifying image. I don't even have the words to describe the pure skin-crawling horror of this moment. The journey thus far has had its fair share of cruelty, but this scene is something beyond that. The smallest sliver of a silver lining exists. Through this process, Prushka, because of her will to continue to adventure with Rico, becomes a white whistle. Now, the group can continue their journey down into the 6th layer. I didn't expect that, and it was way more than bitter sweet. Although the protagonists succeeded in their goal, it feels as hollow a victory as could exist. But perhaps that's what success in the Abyss is. So yeah, this movie was dark. Multiple examples of full-blown child mutilation kind of put me in an icky mood. Here's a clip of Bozo dubbed over to cheer us all up. I really love this movie. I thought it was the natural continuation of this story that somehow manages to feel even more true to the tone that it established from the very beginning. There is no other series quite like Made in Abyss right now, and I'm so happy that I get to experience this joyous and cosmically horrific adventure. I couldn't be more excited for where Season 2 takes me next. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me ramble about these 3 movies, and a special thank you to my patrons. I needed a place to get my thoughts out, and I hope you got some enjoyment out of this review. I can't possibly see why any Made in Abyss fans wouldn't like movie 3, but how do you feel about the first 2 movies? Please let me know that and any of your other thoughts in the comments. Eventually, I hope to review Season 2 whenever that wraps up. So until the next time, I'll shut up.